Everybody close your eyes. You are invited to a really big party. All your friends are going to be there. And you show up to this building, and man, there's a lot of people there. You can see people gathering outside and gathering inside, and you walk to the door, and you open the door, and you see dozens and dozens of faces. Some you recognize, some you don't. But you're almost overwhelmed by the amount of people that are there. So after you've been there a little while, taking in conversation, just imagine the space, and you need a moment out of that space. So across the room, you see a door. Walk towards that door. When you open the door, you walk into a room. Imagine the room as white floors, white walls, white ceiling. Everything in the room is bright white. And you see a table and a chair, also white, in the middle of the room. So you walk over to it, you sit down, and the door closes behind you. And when you turn around to look, you see a red door. And on this bright red door, it says, "Do not enter." Now look at that door for a moment and ask yourself, would you go through the door? Or would you not go through the door? Okay, open your eyes. Everybody's like, hey, I was sleeping. Would you open the door? Not right away. I have hearing whispers. Who says no? No, I would not open the door under any circumstances. Why wouldn't you open the door? Okay. What about somebody who would open the door? Okay, all in the back row, I can see that back there. All the people in the back, raise their hand. I'd open the door. Somebody tell me why you would open the door. Curiosity. Number one answer from this morning, too. Curiosity, absolutely. But what if there's risk behind the door? What if there's something that could harm you? That's possible, right? Right, you don't know unless you open it. So in this world, there's predominantly two types of people. One that would not open the door under any circumstances, and the other type of people that want to know what's behind the door, and they're willing to open it. So I would tell my daughter this when she was a teenager, because she always loved to get in trouble, and be the first to open the door. There's a third type of person, and that's what I'm asking all of you today. Be this third kind of person that recognizes that there's a whole group out there. There's a whole bunch of people that you just walk through, and that they're going to probably, there's a pretty good chance half of that space, half of that room would be willing to open that door. But we got to do it together, because sometimes we have to break against the rules that are outlined for us, but it's going to take all of us as a community to open that door. And thank you. Hope you enjoyed the session. You have something, I could read as a bio. And I realized that so often in the work I've done in speaking throughout the last 20 years or so or more, I never had a bio for any of the congregations I've spoken to, other than a little bit about who I am and whatnot. But I did change it up today, in that I'm here for purpose. And I want to say that from the get-go, that I'm here for purpose and to meet and to connect with people. And so this is a little bit of my story about what I believe, and I'm so happy and blessed to be here in front of you today. So thank you. I was born and raised in a little place outside of Barstow, California. Anybody know Barstow, California? It's pretty awful. We called it the armpit of California. And I didn't even grow up in Barstow. I actually grew up 30 miles east of Barstow in a place called Newberry Springs. There's nothing out there. My family was super religious. My mom was Holy Roller Pentecostal. And man, was she ever. And my dad was Jehovah's Witness. So if you can imagine, that marriage didn't last a whole long time, and they actually divorced because one believed in the Trinity and the other didn't. And that's all I ever knew of their divorce. And I didn't understand why religion would separate two people that were supposed to love each other. Well, my mom ended up remarrying, and she remarried a Mormon. So my upbringing was very super tight. I went, as an adolescent, I went to church for 12 hours every Sunday, seminary before school every day of the week, and 3 youth groups a week. I really wanted to go on a mission, and I believed that that was going to be in my journey one day, and that I was going to minister and lead and talk to people about God. But I couldn't shake the feeling and knowledge, knowing that something wasn't right. Something inside of me was different. Something didn't feel right. And my mom would say, oh, God doesn't make mistakes. I'm like, he did with me. I thought I was an ugly kid, I'm not going to lie. Ugly kid. Buck teeth, stringy hair, just not an attractive child. And I can admit that now. But that's not even where the pain was. The pain was feeling as though something was wrong with me and that I was afraid that anybody could see it, that I just didn't fit. So I would pray every day, every night before I went to sleep for God to take this pain away and make me feel comfortable with who I am. And that just didn't happen. And see, the reason why I felt that way was because I was born biologically female. So if you pull out my birth certificate, it says a big F on it. And I just didn't feel that way. I knew from a very young age, but I didn't know, we didn't have language. I mean, I was born in the 80s, so it's not been that long ago, not that old, but we did not have language like transgender until the 90s. All I knew of people like me was what my mom used to tell me when I was a child, to say that she worked down in West Hollywood and she had these men who would wear women's clothing that would come into her, because she was a waitress. And that would come in and she would serve them, and they would ask her to teach them how to walk like a lady and how to dress like a lady, because my mom was pretty. And my mom would tell me, there are some sick people in the world and you don't want to be like them. So I was terrified for anyone to find out that something in me did not feel like the person looking back at me was me. And so as I got older, I tried to follow the right path, and I ended up getting married at a young age to a man, and we had a daughter and when I was 21. And still these feelings of, I got tired of trying to adopt a religion and feel secure in a religion, and I said, I got to go on my own path anyway. I'm done. 16, I left church, left all the ways, and said, I'm going out on my own. But all the while knowing that there was this thing about me, I didn't know if it was special or something wrong, but I had to do a journey of self-discovery to figure out what that was. And so I had $20 in my pocket and a full tank of gas. I left the deserts of California, and I drove until I ran out of gas, and I landed in Flagstaff, Arizona. And I met other people that were kind of like myself. They were gay, they were lesbian, and I got exposed to this kind of new world of, oh my God, I could be me. So I came out first as a lesbian, and still didn't add up. It was still something. But I did not have a walk with a faith at that time. So I got involved with the LGBT community, and then as a mother, I was a mother to a child. In the state of Arizona, they did not have laws to protect LGBT people back in the early 2000s. So a judge a judge said basically I did not have any right to my child, and I didn't see my daughter for 5 years. So with this rage and anger, you took my child away because of who I am. That's not right. So I went to school, and I got 2 bachelor's degrees in sociology and criminal justice, and I said, okay, I'm going to go to law school and become a lawyer and do something to get my kid back. And so as I'm progressing and getting my education, and I'm getting involved in advocacy, and I led marches, and I wrote laws, and I created programs, and I created events, all the while trying to make change in the LGBT community to get people to see that we were more than just less than human. Because back then it was just as bad in 2008 when they were trying to pass inclusive policies to protect us. I've been, and when I look back at all the horrible things that have happened to me because of my identity, when someone has questioned me and say, oh, you chose to be this way, I tried to choose not to be. And what has happened is I have been arrested. I've been thrown in jail for crimes I didn't commit, charged with felonies I didn't commit, taken on joyrides by none other than Prescott's finest. I'll tell you that one. Terrible things. I've been sexually assaulted, physically assaulted, cast out, and all the while knowing that I had a deeper sense of purpose, and that I was not going to just take it, that there was something more to life than what people believe as far as identity. And so I needed a path of discovery to find out really how I could heal from these things and what was my purpose. That I knew since I was a child that there was something more in me that had a purpose and a deeper meaning. And as I would, so many events, so many things. I think back even as I talk like I'm thinking about it for the very first time all over again. I remember one year doing over 250 events. Leading these events to bring people together. And as I advocated and as I made change, it's still something was missing. Well, in 2014, I landed in Prescott, Arizona, and I landed a new type of job, moving away from like more social events and whatnot into working in the mental health field. Because I said, man, if you can, it's with LGBT folks, there's so much going on. We've been cast out, rejected. We're sick in the eyes of healthcare. We're sick in the eyes of religion. We've been criminalized. Like, how can I get the world to change a little bit about the way we're perceived? And so I started working with churches and congregations local here in the community to form support groups and events and things within the community here, because in mental health they would come and want to support, but once they left my office, where were they going to go? There was no community, no sense of camaraderie, no sense of belonging. And then, man, I'll tell you what, I've experienced probably more pain in the LGBT community than outside of it from people that don't agree. Because sometimes, if you ever heard the saying that hurt people, absolutely. Absolutely. And in the LGBT community, we did a really good job of that, of hurting one another. So as I turned to organizations that were nonprofit organizations, healthcare organizations, trying to work police departments, fire departments, you name it, first responders, whatever we could do to serve the needs of LGBT people better, because I believe that if you could serve LGBT people when they suffer the greatest gaps and disparities of any other population out there, then you can serve anyone with those models. And it worked. I started working in the substance abuse community, the homeless community. Oh man, I worked with CASAs for court-appointed special advocates for children. I taught classes. Anyone that would book me, say, let me in. My message was always the same. I'm not here to change the way you believe. I would tell doctors, if you walk out that door and you hate transgender people after today, I don't care. My role is not to change the way people believe. It's to arm people with the tools necessary so that they can do their job in a good way to help that person and make that commitment to do no harm. If you can't handle a person's LGBT status, then don't. but at least give them the warm handoff to someone who cares and who will love them and embrace them. Because I can tell you, for one, after losing 8 transgender people to suicide in a matter of 3 months, I can't handle that pain. And that's actually when I left the behavioral health field. It's because I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't take not being able to help people. So I turned to God. And I said, okay, you've helped me do these things. You've helped me bridge this gap for people and build programs. But every time I'm going to get a program off the ground or get it funding or get it help or support, like I run into brick walls. No one's willing to help because of the political nature of it all. What do you want me to do, God? And what is it I'm supposed to be doing? So really did a lot of soul searching, especially through pain and sorrow. When you get thrown out of the back of a police car and you are scared for your life, when we're in pain, who do you turn to? That's when you pray your deepest prayers. And I hate saying that, and it's sad because we should turn to God all the time when things are going great too. And that's why I believe that God has allowed some of the horrible things that have happened to me through my life to happen. Because I believe that God had a bigger plan and a bigger message for me. So when I prayed and I asked, okay, what is it I'm supposed to be doing? This was like 2017, 2018. God said, you are supposed to reach and connect people far and wide beyond your reach for long after you're dead. I was like, what does that mean? Like, what am I really supposed to be doing? Am I supposed to be creating communities? I had always had this dream of creating this one-stop shop app where you could find all your resources in one place. Because if you needed a resource, I was that guy. Anybody who had an LGBT person on anywhere on the spectrum, if they had a problem, they called me. Where is the homeless shelter? Who will marry them? How can we house them? Where can they work? They need a lawyer. You name it. So if I didn't know, I knew someone who did know. So I thought, well, maybe that's it. Maybe I'm supposed to build this one-stop shop kind of resources connection that will help people far and wide. So I really put myself into it, but still going, what is it? What do all these things need? Funding. So I'm sitting on the couch. I'm running a nonprofit and working and doing it 2 jobs at the same time, running a nonprofit and being a therapist at the same time. And I'm tired. And my daughter's looking for colleges. And she says, she goes, hey, Link. She goes, she called me Link as well. Dad nor mom didn't really fit. It just passed. November 6th was Transgender Parents' Day. I coined that holiday. I was so proud to see it online. I was like, yeah. Because my daughter and I didn't know how to, what day do we celebrate? So we made our own. And we thought it was kind of fitting in November. And nothing seems to be happening that week, so we'll pick that date. And so it kind of caught and took off. So little side note there, I digress. But my daughter says, if you went to school, if you went back to college, what would you do? I said, oh, honey, that ship has sailed. Been there, done that, got the T-shirt, and I had a master's in law, and I was like, I don't want to be a lawyer. I don't want to do any of that, but I don't want to go back to school. And she says, well, if you did, what would you do? And I said, all right. I said, I would make our data tell a story in rural communities, small towns, and underprivileged people, underserved people. And I said, I would make that data tell a story to get funding so that we could do something about it, so we can create measures to fix these problems that our communities have. She says, wow, if you had, what would be the program? Where would you apply? I said, honey, I've never seen a program like that. If they had one, I would have applied already. So the next day, and I want you to know, technology, Facebook, has always been listening to you. Okay, your TVs, if you have a smart TV, it's listening to you. Your phones even know when you go to the bathroom. So all that stuff, all that hype they've been trying to scare you all these years about, it's all true. Okay? The next day, this is 2018, I open my phone, I open up Facebook, and it says, Harvard Business Analytics Program. Make your data tell a story. I laughed out loud. I said, fine, why not? I'll apply. I apply as a joke. I lived right down the street from here at the time. And I was caregiving, another job I was caregiving for a man, and I was in his yard helping him with his gardening and whatnot. And I get a phone call, and it's the Harvard Business Analytics program. They're calling me for an interview. I was like, this is a joke, right? And they tell me this is a brand spanking new program. We've never done it before. And it's hosted by Harvard Business School. It's a master's degree in business analytics, which is the confluence of statistics, engineering, business, and leadership. I'll tell you what, I hated statistics in my first program. And the first class out the gate in this program was quantitative stats at the Harvard master's level, all 4 years of advanced statistics in one 8-week semester. You ever seen that Sandra Bullock comic where she's staring up and there's all these numbers and formulas? I don't know if you've ever seen that meme. You can look it up and Google it, Sandra Bullock and numbers, and it'll pop up. That was me in my statistics class. But all of a sudden, I get this crazy opportunity that I can't turn down, and suddenly I'm going to Harvard, half of it online, and that was at a time where Zoom was just really in its infancy. But I mean, COVID hit while I was in this program. You know how the whole world shut down? Not Harvard. They didn't miss a beat. We didn't miss a class. Nothing. In fact, we weren't even allowed to talk about COVID when that class came on. But it was wild. There was 1,000 of us in this program that have completed this program. The program doesn't exist anymore. They literally had it for a short window of time. Because there was 1,000 of us, the world's top leaders, who worked for the biggest and best corporations in the world, all the presidents of all the global world banks, creators of AI, big-wig people, and then me. And I was like, okay, I'm this transgender dude from Podunk, Prescott at the time, Podunk, Prescott, and I run some nonprofits and I help some LGBT folks. How in the heck and why was I selected for this program? How am I going to get through it? Right? Because I was law and sociology, understanding of people, and all of a sudden you're going to put technology, and everything was about tech and AI and machine learning and language models and all this stuff about how our technology works, how it's listening to us, how corporations are using it, and how they're using it to divide. And this is the piece I wanted to include that I forgot this morning. It hit me why I was there when we did this case study on Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook. And during the 2020 election, we know who it was between. We'll just call it red and blue, okay? Mark Zuckerberg and his team made a bet that they could use data and statistics and engineering to completely divide the American people in half. When they were done with their little beta testing, the elections came out 71 million to 71 million. They won their bet. So a bunch of dudes, tech bros, sitting in a room somewhere, made a bet on the American people and they won. We became the most divided nation we'd ever seen in history, and we've stayed that way. Because there's money to be made. Every time there's a meme or something that ticks you off, it is sent to you by analytics on purpose so that you'll click on it, because every click they get, they make increments of money. So if they can divide people, they're easier to control. And as a guy with a legal degree, trying to do right by human beings, this really infuriated me. I was angry that out of the 2 years I was in this program that we never talked about ethics until the last 5 minutes of class. Ethics should have been at the heart of everything in technology. It's why I was there. We can use and leverage technology as a force of good to help enrich people's lives every day, and why aren't we? So I said, okay. I graduated from the program. I did some stuff at the global level, consulting and whatnot, but it was my dream. Remember my dream. Wanted to create a one-stop shop resource center. So I did. I raised a lot of money. Between school and the company that I started, the app company, I raised over $250,000 to build this app. It was an amazing app. You could build your own profile just like Facebook. If you were a business, you could buy and sell through there. You could had a newsreel, so you could get all the local news, all from the local area, all in one place, so you didn't have to go and jump around. It was an amazing app. You could make friends with your neighbors. It worked just like Nextdoor, Facebook, eBay, all of it, all rolled into one, but just for Northern Arizona. And I thought it was absolutely fantastic. But guess what it was missing? Huh? Funding for sure, but even if I had all the money in the world to throw at it, what would I have been missing? People. People, the heart, that's what makes technology go around. I believe that, man, I've been speaking at places for years, telling my story. I have a big following. Now I've just graduated from Harvard. Like, this is going to be great. People are going to come running. All the people I've ever worked with are going to hear about what I'm doing, and they're going to love it. They're going to come and download it. They're going to, sign up. No, that did not happen. Because analytics and Facebook and all are so good, it was a pay to play. And I couldn't reach people. Not one at a time, not fast enough. And now this technology, well, it had a bill that came every month, whether it had people or not. And I realized that I made one of the biggest errors ever, was that I put the tech and built the tech first. And then trying to find the people. And I was having a really hard time, and I was growing really resentful, and I'm praying, God, why? Why would you lead me here? Why would you have me do all of this, see all the way at the top, go all the way to the top with the world's best, but not be able to get this thing off the ground? What am I doing wrong? It wasn't that I was doing anything wrong, or that I wasn't following the right path, but it was because people weren't first. Well, I'm sitting one morning, and I'm scrolling through the newsreel, and I'm thinking, this is cool, man. I did a really good job with this. I've been adding all the different news sources so I could see everything going on all in one feed. Well, it starts to trending. I'm trending the analytics, and I see that it's trending homelessness. And that homelessness is on the skyrocketing. Now, this was last year. So it was hidden. You had one type of person that would say, hey, it's happening, we need to help these people, but I don't want to see it. And if they end up in my yard, I'm going to call 911. I'm going to call the police. Or you have the other side of the pulpit that says, hey, we don't want the homelessness in our town. We're going to ship them somewhere else. So no one was taking responsibility. And then I was seeing the corruption, especially in the news, of all the different directors and people with extortion of homeless shelters and taking all the funding and pocketing it. All the while, people weren't getting served. And one example is I saw in the city of Sedona that 30% of their workforce was living in their car. And there was no place for them to live. And instead of providing housing, they said, oh, you can park in this space over here, but you have to be gone before the sun comes up, and you can't come until the sun goes down. So basically, we don't want anybody to know that you exist. Well, I lost it when I saw that a woman had a baby in her back seat, and they covered it up. And I said, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to cover it up. I'm not going to be that guy that bad things happen and I don't say anything. So I wrote a letter and got in touch with the Arizona Center for Investigative Journalism. Had an interview on a Friday where I unveiled all the things I had been finding in all the local news. Uncovered all the corruption, so to speak. Just let it all out of the bag. Well, that was on a Friday, and everybody knows how you feel on a Friday, right? So as you can imagine, it was a long conversation. Well, on Monday morning, a government official, the electric company, government official, electric company, and law enforcement showed up to our door and took our electric meter right off the pole. And said, that ought to keep you quiet. Nobody would listen. People thought I just didn't pay the electric bill. They're like, oh, well, you must have not done something right. They don't just come and do that. You have warnings. Well, no, that's when the targeting started. We were followed by law enforcement who pulled us over, took our license plates off our vehicles, gave us a big ticket that's taken forever to pay off. Like drones flying over our new place that we were staying at. Like definitely fearful for my life because I was willing to expose the truth. And I said, okay, well, I was that guy. Remember the red door? I was the guy that opened the red door. But I didn't have people behind me willing to stand with me. People were scared. I couldn't go to anybody and go stay with them and say, hey, can I stay on your couch or something? Because that means I would bring that to them, to their doorstep, and I didn't want that. So we asked some hard questions, and my brother was having a 4th of July party in Iowa, and we said, all right, well, let's go. And we put everything we owned in storage and hit the road, drove to Iowa. And after 4th of July, I said, okay, well, now what? What do we do now? Like, there's no place to go home to in Arizona. It was either I was, I had become this, all of the Harvard stuff and all that. And you have to imagine, I was born a woman. There was transition in there too. So I went from being a lesbian advocate to a bald, middle-aged white guy with a beard. I became the most uncool person in America overnight. And there was no going back. There's no growing it back. Okay? It's gone. It's gone forever. So I've embraced my baldness. But not everybody did during that time. So there was no safe outlets. I couldn't go to the LGBT organizations because I didn't represent that ideology. And I couldn't go to the conservative side either because I'm against God. Right? Just my existence. So I found myself in this really bad in-between of going, what do I do? Well, I got to go back to where it started. So I prayed and I asked God, please show me what it is I'm supposed to do. What is next step in my journey? And God said, go to Boston. Go to Cambridge, to Harvard's doorstep, and ask all those leaders that you learn from what they're willing to do about the ethics in artificial intelligence and what is happening. And that you can't get the news out there because people cover it up. It's covered up. So I said, okay. So we went and we drove the over 2,000 miles. Except we didn't have any money. Bill collectors calling me left and right. We started doing DoorDash and delivering people's food. And realizing just how disconnected the world really was. We would pick up these orders from people that wouldn't even speak to us. They would just be sitting on the counter with their name. We take this order and we drive it over to this person and we set it down inside the doorstep and we take a picture and we walk away. The world lacked human connection altogether. You could scream and yell and holler and say awful things from behind a screen and pay no consequences. Look around. People are falling in love with AI chatbots and marrying them. That's how disconnected we all are from one another. We would rather marry an AI than marry a real human and face those consequences of stinky socks or whatever, your partner does. But that's the world we've come to, is that technology has done away with the human. And as a person that has an advanced artificial intelligence degree, I went because I wanted technology to do good by humanity. Where were the rest of us? So I got to Cambridge and I crashed the International Artificial Intelligence Conference at Harvard and MIT, where all the world's best and most influential and professors and writers and publishers on AI were all there, including NASA, a couple presidents of other countries. There was a lot of people there. And one of my friends actually is retired from NASA, and we had met some time ago, and his name's Steve. Good guy. Dang, I'm so happy for him he's retired, because he had a stressful job. He was the head of all innovation at NASA. He had to, let people know through the future what was going to happen, and his role was to get crowds involved in solving real big problems. And I'm mad because no one's listening while I'm there, and we sit down and have our glass of wine, and he says, Link, you think people don't care, we don't care, right? I said, you don't care. He goes, oh, but we do. But you have to understand that at this level, he goes, it's a very small, tight-knit community. Look around you. Everybody knows everybody, right? And I said, yeah, we all know each other. He goes, small circles, those of us that like this technology and AI stuff and lead it. But those of us that created it have to stay ahead of it. And we don't have time to stop and look left to right to see who we're leaving behind. That's your job. That's why you're here. I said, oh, so I'm supposed to solve it. I'm supposed to build in ethics and tell people what's right about AI. And he says, yes. He goes, but first you got to build your audience. Build a crowd. I said, how am I going to do that? And he goes, you'll find a way. So I went on down the road and did a lot of praying and a lot of soul searching on that trip. We saw over 600 towns and cities, traveled over 28 states in 3 months. Door dashing. And then we came back and we said, okay, well, we don't want to live with anybody. We're not going to buy a house or rent an apartment or go get a job. What am I going to do? I've got this crazy, wild career of 14 years of formal education. Got to do something with it. And I still have this burning desire that God has told me I'm supposed to connect people far and wide, beyond my reach for long after I'm dead. How am I supposed to do that? So I prayed the entire trip. And we said, okay, we're going to do this, but this time it's going to be people first. Because as we traveled from town to town and place to place, what we saw is that every single town in America had two things. A library, no matter how big or small. Every town has a library. And every town has a church. And when we were feeling our lowest, we had nothing and nobody to turn to, we were scared, the place that we wanted to pull in the most was a church parking lot. And those were the places that were empty. And as we reached out to churches across America, you know what we found? Guess what the average age of every congregation is? Look around you. I'm not telling you anything you don't know already, right? It's the same across America. The retired are still carrying the same keys and the same torch as they have been for years, because those of us that are younger aren't coming in to replace and coming in to help. We need to do that. And so God, it was basically like a realization, said, guess where you're going to be speaking, Link? So we're on this mission. We came back, we remodeled a 12-foot camp travel trailer, 1972 travel trailer. She's really cute. Pulling her with it, it was in my family always, my dad's 1976 Chevy square body. 7 miles to the gallon, uphill, downhill, sideways, doesn't matter. But we're pulling her, and we live in her full time. We've been living in her full time since the spring. And we've now in a place where we have mobile internet, we have the accommodations and stuff that we need to really get started. So we're launching this mission, basically to start a revolution, to really ignite people's passions again, to connect with one another, to transform this hopelessness that we see every day into prosperity. And it's going to start with congregations first. Because these are the safe places. These are the places where people love each other regardless of who they are or what background they are or what they believe in. If we really truly know God, God is everything. God is a true reflection, or we are a true reflection of the diversity that God loves us all. And it needs to start in places that feel safe again. We can't do it with a condemning, you're going to go to hell. I tell you, it's not attracting the people that need the help most. And guess what? Those people that need the help most, the people that are harmless or homeless, the people that are struggling with substance abuse, those are going to be the best volunteers these places have. Because when they find the help and they find the love and the compassion, they'll want to do more for other people too. And it grows. So we hit the road. We're already on the road. We go to Quartzsite in January, and from there we'll be traveling with the seasons, reaching out to, our goal is to reach a new town or community every 2 weeks, and reach out to the nonprofits, reach out to the homeless shelters, whatever it's going to take to build community online and in person. And we're almost done with the guide. We'll be giving a guide that's free to every single person that signs up, called A Friend in Your Pocket. Because that's what we hope to be. Someone that's a friend in your pocket, because help should not cost a thing. And so I just want to say thank you for having me and having us here, and thank you. I can't cry. Thank you. And so I will go downstairs. You can ask me. I'm an open book. Anything you want to ask me, I'm not easily offended either. So thank you for having me.